それでお別れの水杯をそこで済まして、それからそれぞれ
The 12 of us shook hands, said to each other, "See you at Yasukuni."
12名握手をして、それぞれ飛行機に乗り込むんですが、
Their reward would be a place of honor among the spirits of the war dead who dwelled at Yasukuni, the great Shinto shrine in Tokyo. There, even the emperor would bow. The pilots were told they would protect the empire as the divine wind, the kamikaze, had 7 centuries before. Kublai Khan and his huge Mongol armies invaded twice in the 13th century, only to be destroyed at the last minute by typhoons. These pilots would be the first wave of 10 to try to cripple the U.S. Navy supporting the siege of Okinawa. "Remember the carriers," their commander urged. "The enemy has many ships. Do not attack the first ship you see."
In my plane, I found a message card. "We wish success to Corporal Shimada from the maintenance crew." I was moved by it very much. And, at a sign from the captain, we took off right away.
355 planes began the attack on April 6th. Kamikazes had attacked the Navy before, but never on such a scale.
One and a half hours passed. 2 hours passed, and we came near Okinawa. I could no longer hold in my emotions and shouted out with the loudest possible voice, "Mother!" I don't remember calling for my father, but I do remember I called for my mother.
That same morning, a Japanese battleship slipped her moorings in Japan's inland sea and headed for Okinawa. The Yamato bore the ancient name for Japan. With 18-inch guns, she was the largest battleship ever built. She had no fighter escort. The symbol of Japan's pride, had embarked on a suicide mission.
As the Yamato left the Bungo Strait, the captain gathered the officers and everyone on the crew to the deck and read out the orders he had received from the commander of the Imperial Navy. Our country is in a critical situation. It is time for all the 100 million Japanese people to stand up and prepare for the final battle. And we, the Yamato crew, should take the lead.
The Yamato's mission was to attack the fleet off Okinawa. She never got that far. Her contribution would be to attract fighter planes from the U.S. carriers and leave the fleet more vulnerable to kamikaze attacks.
I was up high and saw the 5 weights of torpedoes coming toward us. The captain calmly accepted the situation. He did not react at all to the sound of the explosions. The torpedoes slammed into the side of the ship. I clearly remember the scene. The Yamato looked like a potato stabbed with hundreds of steel sticks.
It would take 11 torpedoes and 8 bombs to sink the Yamato. Most of the crew, more than 3,000 men, went down with her. Lieutenant Yoshio Emoto was one of 269 survivors.
Westerners often ask me how the Japanese could choose death over surrender. I have to bring up the traditional notion of sacrifice and heroism in the defense of the nation. Yamato Damashi. It comes largely from the spirit of the samurai. We were taught that Yamato Damashi was a virtue, a fundamental principle of the Japanese people. To be taken captive was against this principle, and the biggest shame and disgrace to us. On one mission, one of the men in my unit was shot and critically wounded. He was young and had a wife and small children. I asked him whether he wanted to leave a message for anyone. He said there was no message to leave. Then he faced the direction of the imperial palace, threw his hands in the air, and said, "Long live the emperor," and died. I do not think that Westerners can fully understand this behavior.
There was a hypnotic fascination to a sight so alien to our Western philosophy, an admiral observed. We watched each plunging kamikaze with the detached horror of one witnessing a terrible spectacle rather than as the intended victim.
A lot of these kids were pretty clear thinking. They were college graduates, best and the brightest, many of them in Japan. They're thinking in terms of community, family, which is everything to the Japanese. Protection of your parents, protection of your brothers and sisters, protection of your home village. If they could stop an invasion that would destroy their country, their culture, their emperor, and their villages, they will have done great things. So they took to the air, hero gods of the sky.
2 kamikazes attacked the aircraft carrier Bunker Hill on May 11th.
Both of them strafed over my head, fortunately, but the second one dropped his bomb into the ready room that I had just left 5 minutes before, and then he turned his plane and dove into the carrier. And then the gasoline lines that were laid out on our deck, we were being refueled, ready to fly again. Those caught on fire, and then whatever ammunition was laying out on the carrier deck, those all exploded. As soon as one plane would explode, it would set another on fire, and then that would explode. If there were bombs in the bomb bay, they would go off. You couldn't breathe it. It was intense, I mean thick. There was no oxygen anywhere. The wind was coming back to the stern where we were. There's no place for us to go except get out of that smoke, get away from that heat. It's gonna kill you if a bomb does it.
Death on these ships was really awful. Everybody in the Pacific that served on the hospital ships said the worst scarring and the worst victims were the victims of the oil fires, burned from head to foot. Everyone said that to see a burned victim in a state of agony was the worst kind of experience anyone could have in the war, except to be the victim, himself. And this mentality of constantly being on alert, the warning, the attack, the warning, the attack, and a plane coming right in on you, drove a lot of guys berserk.
In the 10 waves of kamikaze attacks off Okinawa, Japan lost 1,900 pilots. Corporal Shimada was not one of them. He had maintenance problems, an oil leak, and crashed off a small island. After 6 weeks, he managed to get back to his base.
すぐまた出撃するからぜひ
I said,
飛行機を
I wish to go on another mission.
ください
Please
と
prepare a plane for me.
言って申告したところが
To my surprise, the officer was angry and yelled at me.
送られちゃいま
How
した
can
ね
you come back alive? You must have spared your own life.
命が惜しくて帰っ
You
てきたんだろう
idiot!
バカ野郎もうこう手が震えてガー
I was
ッ
angry.
となってしまってね
My hands were trembling with rage.
その時に初めて
They called us war gods.
飛行機の
For the first time, I realized that I was regarded merely as part of the plane.
もうこれもう本当
Isn't
に
it
ね
natural that I decided not to sacrifice my life
気
again?
持ちになるのはまあ当たり前じゃないでしょうかね。
In the sea off Okinawa, the U.S. Navy suffered its greatest losses of World War II. Almost 10,000 killed or wounded. The Japanese sank 30 American ships and damaged 368 others. Chester Nimitz, Admiral of the Pacific Fleet, was appalled. In April, he had agreed to a strategy of invading Japan. After 2 months of the Okinawa campaign, he cabled Washington that he could no longer support it. Many on the front lines shared his concern.
We started getting instructions on invading Japan. And we considered ourselves dead men. We really did. We knew we wouldn't survive.